Okay, I just wanted also to sort of maybe pause a little bit to look at new ways of looking, because I know you've mentioned one or two photographers, but perhaps you could talk a little bit more about these photographers that you've brought together and the different kind of strands that have emerged in your selection process.
Right, so this just explains, in fact, the two Argentines and the 9 photographers that we have at Parr.
So that's it's about the platform to do with recent and new
Exactly,
work.
yeah.
Okay.
In fact, ironically, some of the work isn't entirely recent, but it's all recently discovered. For example, at the Parr we have these pictures by Billy Monk, who is a bouncer in a nightclub in the Catacomb Club in Cape Town. I'd heard about these photographs because Peter Hugo, who's a really smart photographer, I mean, he's one of my correspondents. I often, whenever I see him, I say, what's great from South Africa? And he'll tell me very concisely exactly the new work that you have to see. And he said, you know, these photographs about Billy Monk that I've seen, and they look really interesting. And he says, by the way, my dealer in South Africa has just taken charge of them. And so I talked to Michael Stevenson in Cape Town, and they said, yes, we've just got these Billy Monk pictures, we're ready to do something with them. So what happened was this, it's a fantastic story. He photographed in this, he was a bouncer in a nightclub. He took pictures on the side just to make a bit of extra cash. It's like a crazy place, there's people drinking all over the place, you know, having a good time. He took these pictures, sold them back to them, okay? Someone's seen these pictures and offered to give him a show in Joburg. And he agreed, and they had this show. It opened. He couldn't go to the opening because in order to supplement his income, he was diving for pearls at the time. So he decided 2 weeks later he would make his way to Joburg to see the show. He got to Joburg, because he was living just outside, and he ended up in a street fight, and he basically got murdered. So he never saw his show. And then, you know, the show happened, some prints were bought, and that was the end of Billy Monk. And then they've been sort of frothing away where people knew about it, but not quite, until now, for the first time, they're actually shown here. And it's a remarkable body of work. And we have, again, taken the black and white negatives, the scans, and kind of made some sensational prints to go with that. So I think stories like this are great. And then there's another one I have to tell you about, Oscar Fernandez Gomez. So he's someone that came to my light because I talked to Emily, who works at Photo España, who's another of my correspondents. And I said to her about a year ago, who have you seen from Latin America that you really rate? Because Photo España, one of the things they really do, which is fantastic, is they have a series of folio reviews in different countries in Latin America. They do 2 every year. They send a group of reviewers over, they look through there, and they find maybe 3 or 4 photographers from each country. They invite them to Photo España, not to have a show, just to come, to meet people, take part in the folio reviews. And last year, they found this wonderful taxi driver called Oscar Fernandez Gomez. And he was a wedding photographer in Monterrey, Mexico. And as he was driving around, he started to as he was driving to the weddings, he realized that in order to supplement his income, he should become a taxi driver. So he bought a taxi, or got hold of a taxi, and as he was driving around, he photographed through his taxi window these different events and scenes that he saw. And he was doing this in order that he should give his daughter a set of photographs about what his daily life was about. But in fact, he lost his daughter, but he continued taking these photos. And she told me about this story, and immediately think, God, that sounds really intriguing. I saw the photographs. He had 2 sets. He had the typologies through the window, these other things that he encountered. So I went for the typologies, and that's why we have Oscar Fernandez going. So all of them have these little stories, if you like, of how I found them. What's interesting is often these photographers were doing something else. We have a bouncer and a taxi driver, right? And we have a village photographer from Senegal. So as well as actually people who are photographers in the traditional sense, in the way that Alejandro and Esteban from Argentina are photographers, we also have these other photographers doing other things and took these photographs when they were doing these other jobs. And that often is what makes their work, so it has the integrity that makes the work come alive.
Okay. And so could you talk a little bit about Drew Malhotra and also
yes.
Mohamed Barassa and the strand that emerges, which links into also the strand that's presented at the university?
Well, what's interesting, so Mohamed Barassa is an Algerian photographer who lives in Paris, and he is one of these people that is very interesting doing the staging. He photographs the Algerian youth, so quite a problematic area in urban Paris, and he sets up these scenes. He gets his friends to reenact them, and he then takes them again on 5/4, so fantastic quality. So here's another example, like Alejandro, of someone who's staging photography. What's the other one you asked me about?
Oh yes,
Dhruv. I mean, I had a show in Photo Inc. in Delhi earlier this year, and it's a fantastic gallery. I mean, it's one of the few photography commercial galleries in India. And part of Devika, the woman who runs Photo Inc.'s stable, was this new photographer that she just found called Dhruv Malhotra. And one of the projects that he was doing was photographing at night. And within his night work, there are at least half of them where he had people who were asleep. And I met him, and I said to him, I really like this work. I really think you should pursue the sleeping idea. And that's what he did in the last 6 months. And that's what we're able to show, these fantastic pictures of night scenes in Delhi and Jaipur and various places. But within them, there's always someone asleep. Sometimes they're very obvious, they're right at the front. And sometimes you have to play Where's Wally? And you'll always find someone asleep somewhere in the photograph. Because people sleep in the streets in India all the time. It's, you know, you don't have to be homeless to sleep in the street. That's what people do. They're warm.
Okay then, and also what we said, you're thinking about selecting Wout Berger and Vivian Sasson.
Well, I mean, in Europe, I mean, I don't think anyone in this room would argue with me, but if I was to say that, you know, Holland is probably the hotspot for photography. They've got this dryness, they've got this humour and this you know, rigour that has made their work so brilliant. I mean, it's a very small country, but in terms of photography, they've really excelled in the last 10 to 15 years. And the other great thing about the Dutch is they're brilliant bookmakers. So they understand and know how to create bodies of work and to make them into very good books. So I was overwhelmed with how, you know, the one country I knew I had to represent very well was Holland. And it just so happened that Vivian Sasson had done this wonderful book called Flamboya. She was actually brought up and born in Africa, and she'd been back and she became a fashion photographer. And she took the language that she learned in fashion and then applied it by doing portraits. Again, a combination of casually based one and also set up ones. And she produced this book last year called Flamboya, which is published by Contrasto in Italy. And I know the guy who publishes Contrasto, and he sent me a copy of this book. And when I opened it, I thought, this is absolutely fantastic. And so eventually I met her and invited her to show that. And since Flamboya, she's been back, and we had a combination of the two projects. Likewise with Wout, it was the book that I saw that he produced last year. What's the name, Wout?
Like Birds.
That's it, Like Birds. It's a fantastic book. It's in these landscapes, it's this journey through the landscape. Wout has been around for a long time. I mean, I don't think we know him so much in the UK. He's done maybe 3 or 4 projects. But this just really knocked me out as being a different way of putting together a landscape book. They're all scenes that have some degree of contamination, but you wouldn't know it from looking at it. So that underlines it, and we produce these remarkable big prints, which are up at the Cork Road. So although he's technically not young and emerging, because he's an older guy and he's been around for a while, we don't know him here, and it was a fantastic chance to catch up with one of the great Dutch photographers that we need to see more of.
Okay. And there was something special about both Vivian's work. I mean, her work is sort of hybrid, crosses over a number of...
Well, it really challenges the whole way in which we think about portraits, because portraits of Africans can be problematic. You know, you have the usual kids smiling, yeah, and then you have the usual harrowing scenes. You see something different coming from South Africa with the very healthy South African photography scene, which we know has emerged in the last few years. And of course, 5 years ago I'd have been showing them, but you know, people know about this now. So the whole point here is to bring new things to the party.
Okay, and on that note of portraiture, that is a strand that has emerged in this
Absolutely,
platform.
because along with Vivian Sasson, next door to Vivian Sasson is Susan Opton, who has done this remarkable 2 series of works about GIs, where she's done portraits. The one series is called Sleepers, where you just see their heads lying down. Very 5'4", very close up, almost asleep, dreamy pictures. And underneath she has this caption that informs you how many days they've been serving. And then likewise with this other series with these returned GIs draped with these blankets. They're beautiful prints, and it's a really refreshing take on not only portraiture, but also on this whole subject of the GIs, the returning GIs, and the sort of resonance that we all know that surrounds that whole idea.
Okay, and what is it that's particular about what she's done?
You know, if I could tell you, I wouldn't know.
Okay.
But you know, I mean, there's just something about these pictures which engages.
Yeah.
You look at them and you think, I haven't seen that before. It's really, they're absolutely stunning pictures. And the prints look wonderful. And we've got the two series opposite each other, bouncing as well, you know, communicating with each other. So I'm really happy with the installation, but very difficult to actually analyse why everything works. I mean, that's the magic of photography.
Yeah.
You know it when you see it. But you know, if people ask me, how do you take a good photograph? If I could tell them, you know, I would, but I can't. You know, I can point people in the right direction. But the great thing about photography is always that magic, whereby the unpredictable thing will surprise you, and what you think is going to work doesn't. Thank God it is difficult. You know, it's so difficult to be a good photographer, and so easy to take photographs.
And it is that goes to the heart of your approach, which is very instinctive and very immediate as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's all I've got, isn't it? It's my intuition is the thing that drives me, not only as a photographer, but also as a collector, curator, and all the other things.